And welcome everybody to our webinar tonight, Off to College, a guide for students with epilepsy. This is presented to you by Epilepsy Alliance America and Epilepsy Services of New Jersey, one of our member organizations. Come on screen for a second. So I want to say thank you all for joining us tonight. Just a few brief logistics. First of all, my name is Lisa Gallipoli. I am the COO of Epilepsy Alliance America. All of our participants are muted tonight, but we do have a Q&A feature in the webinar. And also, if you're watching this on Facebook Live, just put a question in the comments for Facebook, and we will get to your questions after each presenter. The webinar is being broadcast via Facebook Live, which I just indicated, and being recorded so that we can post it on our website afterwards for people to watch who are unable to attend. It'll be available in a few weeks. We have some learning objectives for tonight, and I know our speakers are really excited to go through these with you, but really we want to provide an opportunity for individuals who are going off to college to learn more about the college experience while living with epilepsy, information about seizure action plans and rescue medications, and also information about making the college experience the best that it can be, providing information about disability laws, disclosures, documentation, and accommodations. And I'm really excited to share with you our presenters tonight. Epilepsy Alliance America, for those of you who aren't familiar with us, this might be your first interaction with us as an organization. Epilepsy Alliance America is a consortium of member organizations who are like-minded in providing programs and services to individuals with epilepsy around the country. Founded in 2018, we just celebrated and recognized our 5-year anniversary just a few weeks ago. We were founded in 2018 by 8 leading grassroots epilepsy organizations, and now we are actually 17, and by the end of this month, we will be 19 member organizations strong. So we're really proud to bring this webinar to you tonight. And here you'll be able to see who some of our member organizations are as of last week. And as I said, we'll be adding new members to our roster this coming month. So I want to introduce you all to Andrea Rasiopi. Andrea is the Vice President of Programs and Services at Epilepsy Services New Jersey, which is one of our founding member organizations. And they were our partner in putting together the webinar for tonight. She will introduce our speakers to you who have been great friends of Epilepsy Services New Jersey and now are great friends of Epilepsy Alliance America. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Andrea.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thank you everybody for joining the webinar tonight. This is going to be a very informative webinar for those parents and students that are going off to college. So we want to thank Epilepsy Alliance America for asking us to work with you on this great webinar. So I just wanted to give you some background about Epilepsy Services of New Jersey and some programs and services that we have specifically in our state. We do have information and referral, so if you're newly diagnosed or if you have a child or if you need resources about epilepsy, we're your person to call. Our resource coordinators could definitely help direct you in the right to the right organization or resource. We do a lot of trainings throughout the state. In New Jersey, there's a law called Paul's Law that requires all school personnel to be trained in seizure recognition and first aid, and we provide that training. But we also have trainings for students, first responders, just in the workplace, and we also do webinars and professional presentations. Support groups are virtual and in person. Patient Assistance Fund for those that are temporarily unable to pay for their anti-epileptic medications or maybe need assistance with something like getting transportation to their doctor's appointment. An epilepsy scholarship program for graduating high school seniors that are going on to college or further education. Community Impact Board, these are volunteers that meet monthly to focus on advocating for people with epilepsy, raising awareness and fundraising for our programs. History of Epilepsy in America project, we really, it's important for us to remember the journey of people with epilepsy, and we have a lot of the historical aspects of epilepsy in America. in our possession at Epilepsy Services of New Jersey. So we like to share that as well. And we also have our National Caregivers Conference, which is a biannual conference. So the next time this conference will be taking place is 2024. We have programs, we have respite, in-home and hotel respite. Our Camp Nova took place last week. That's a week overnight camp for those with epilepsy and other developmental disabilities for those 12 and up. Health Insurance Navigator, we can help assist individuals that are looking for health insurance. We have an employment program, a New Jersey Wins, New Jersey Support Coordination, and Health and Wellness Services. Lastly, I just wanted to show you some of our fun events. These are events throughout the state that we hold annually, and they're great opportunities for people with epilepsy and their families to meet one another. Our Walk for One is in October, and that's in Piscataway. Epilepsy Awareness Month is November. Paint the Pony Purple is a music event that we do at the Stone Pony in Asbury Park. Our Golf Classic is in July, and that's always at the Upper Montclair Country Club. Our Day at the Beach was last week, and it was it's just a day at the beach for people with epilepsy and their families. And lastly, Seize the Wave is a surfing event for kids with epilepsy that's in Sea City. All these events, we definitely urge you to join our social media, and our handle is at EpilepsyNJ, and our website is epilepsyservicesnj.org. Nicole Hartmann is a board-certified neurologist and epileptologist. She graduated medical school in 2017 from Rowan University School of Osteopathic Medicine in 2017. She completed her neurology residency at the University of Maryland, followed by an epilepsy fellowship at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania in 2022. For the last year, she has completed an epilepsy clinical instructionship also at the University of Pennsylvania. This summer, Dr. Hartmann has just joined the Laurenceville Neurology Center practice, seeing patients in Central Jersey as well as in Penn Medicine Princeton campus. She's continued to work with the Penn Epilepsy Center to open an epilepsy monitoring unit at the Princeton Medical Center. Dr. Hartmann is most proud of being a former Epilepsy Services of New Jersey scholarship winner. And that's always how I will see Nicole Hartmann, even though she's a big neurologist now. So at this point, I just want to introduce Dr. Nicole Hartmann. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you, Andrea. It's great to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me. And I'm hoping that this talk can be informative and helpful to everyone listening. All right, so I have no disclosures. So these viewpoints are my own, just based on my own personal experience, research, and my training, and they don't necessarily reflect that of the Epilepsy Alliance of America or Epilepsy Services of New Jersey. So these are my objectives. So these are the topics that I'm planning to cover. I'm hoping just to cover the main college experience and how it pertains to having a diagnosis of epilepsy. So discussing medication management, seizure rescue and action plans, seizure safety, seizure threshold, mood disorders, and contraception. So a little bit about me, and also first you're off to college. Now what? So now all this time, you've been living with your parents, they've been helping with medications, and you've had a set schedule, and now you're embarking on your own. So a little bit about me. This is a picture of me graduating college in 2011 at Elmira College. And so actually I was diagnosed with epilepsy at age 15. So I have some experience, well, a lot of experience, personal experience living with epilepsy, living at college with epilepsy, and also I've been through medical school, and now I'm an epileptologist. So here I am, but hoping that my personal experience, my professional experience can all be very helpful to everyone. So the basics. First things first, visit your neurologist. I love these summer visits personally. I love seeing all the college kids during the summer before they're off to another year of school. So I would say before you leave to school, plan to meet with your neurologist or epileptologist and discuss your college plans. Are you living on campus? Are you planning to commute? You also may need some forms signed. I fill out seizure action plans and forms and sign them for medical directors, things like that all the time. And also, do you need any accommodations for classes, whether it's more time and access, things like that? And that's our second presenter. We'll definitely talk more about that. Other things to think about as well, your medication plan. You've been going to the same pharmacy for years, or mom and dad have been picking them up from the pharmacy. And so if you're going out of state or someplace far from home, how are you going to get your prescriptions? Will it be on campus, or will it be at a local pharmacy? Something which I learned actually as I was preparing this presentation, if you actually can't mail prescriptions from home, it's actually illegal if you don't have a DEA. And also where you're going to fill it. And the next thing too is also having a rescue plan if you were to have a seizure at school. So more on medication, how much do you have? Where you're going to keep it? You're going to be living with people. Is it going to be safe? Or are you going to keep it, especially if you're on a controlled substance? How are you going to take it with you? There's pill boxes. I used to hand out pill boxes all the time at work. Used to get them from various people and hand them out to my patients. Are you going to keep travel cases, keep them in your purse, etc.? Always have a plan for staying out from when you're in your room. You don't know where your plans are going to take you sometimes. So always keeping a little medication in your backpack, in your purse, in your wallet, things like that. I think I still find medication for myself. I've been on medication now for, oh my God, almost 20 years. And I still take epilepsy medication and carry it with me everywhere I go. So I still find small containers of them in various bags and suitcases. And seizure safety plans. I think this might be one of the most important things to discuss with your neurologist, as well as on campus with whoever that may be, your RA, your health services. So having a seizure action plan, and we'll go into, I stole some things from the Epilepsy Alliance of America that show you what a seizure action plan can look like. And who are you living with? So do you feel comfortable sharing your diagnosis with them? I would hope so, especially if you're going to be living with that person. A roommate is an important person in your life, often become lifetime friends. I am more comfortable with disclosing my diagnosis with people, and I have been when I meet people that I'm going to be staying with. As I've kind of gone through life, I tend to educate people on what, seizure first aid is. This is what to do if I'm going to have a seizure. And how often are you alone? So are you going to be alone in your room every day? Is there anyone going to be checking on you in certain periods of time? And of course, seizure first aid, like I was saying. Your RA is going to be definitely one of the most important allies for those who haven't been college students yet. An RA is typically another college student, usually a junior or senior, and they live on the same floor as you. And they're basically sort of in charge over the floor, and they're your go-to person for any issues, concerns, things that you may run into as a college student living on campus. And then what is your seizure action plan? Finding out at your specific college, it may have different protocols. What's the emergency protocol at your dorm? What happens if 911 needs to be called? And do you have documentation of your seizure action plan that could be readily available to those who may need to access it? So this is a really nice example of what a seizure action plan can be. It doesn't need to be this way. I filled out so many different kinds of these before for anybody that is in, high school, college, typically. I like in this one that it has who they should contact, your information, what your seizures look like, what kinds of seizures that you have, and also what kind of care that you need. It basically provides seizure first aid on a piece of paper for anybody that may not know. And also what kind of rescue treatment do you have? And that I'll be going into a little bit more. And then there's a final portion, which I really think is important, is when to call for emergency. As I think a lot of when you have a seizure, you don't need to go to the ER necessarily every time. So just making sure you have parameters that you and those around you will understand, and to when you should go to the ER. So seizure rescue, this is probably one of my most important topics, the topics I talk about with just about every single patient that I have. What is your rescue plan? So this is not going to focus on the details of the different rescues, but at least knowing what the different options are if you don't have one. I think it's particularly important if you have convulsive seizures or big shaking type grand mal seizures, as we sometimes call them. Sometimes patients that don't have those kinds of seizures, don't necessarily have a seizure rescue. It depends on your type of seizures, your epilepsy, and also your discussion with your neurologist. But there are different options. Now there are nasal sprays, which didn't exist 15 years ago. There's two different kinds. They are Valtoco and Nasolam. Then there's rectal gel, which usually is used more in pediatrics. It's called Diastat. And then there are also oro tabs, things like clonazepam that are dissolvable. And also if you have a vagus nerve stimulator, making sure that you have your magnet and also included on your seizure rescue plan, what to do with the vagus nerve stimulator magnet as well. This is a link from the Epilepsy Alliance of America, which is a great website. So that way, if you don't know how to use your Nasolam or your Valtoco or any of the other rescues, it actually shows you how to do it and how to administer it. And a lot of times, actually, at my office, I have little samples that have a little respirator that show you how to use it as well. So I try to give those to my patients so everyone knows how to use it. Things that should be considered. So medical alert products are very helpful. This one through the Epilepsy Alliance of America, they actually have a discount code for them, I believe. It's called MyID, and a lot of it is scannable. And you can go on the website and you'll scan the ID and it actually takes you to a website that has all of your information on it. Just in case you are out and about and by yourself and you happen to have a seizure unattended, it would be, I think, a good safety protocol to have a bracelet or a medical ID. And they actually are a lot more fashionable nowadays and not as obvious necessarily. I think as long as they have a little star that is obvious to healthcare providers that EMS may get called, so that way they can see it. And so things that I would include, that your name, an emergency contact, the fact that you have epilepsy, potentially what medications, and also if you have a device like a VNS, DBS, or an RNS, because sometimes there are magnets and things that you can swipe in emergency settings. Seizure detection devices. So this is an interesting topic. It isn't necessarily an endorsement of these products, but I think it's always important to get the knowledge and discuss with your doctor and your loved ones what the risk and benefit is of getting these products. So there is one device that is FDA approved for detection of bilateral tonic-clonic seizures in particular, and that is the Embrace 2 watch. And this is a picture of this right here. It's by Empatica. The way that these work are usually by an accelerometer. They tell if there are certain rhythmic movement it has a certain detection setting. Now, as you can imagine, with these type of detection devices, there can be a lot of false positives, especially say you're going running or some sort of exercising. There are also apps that connect to smart watches. So a watch you might already have, an Apple Watch or a Samsung watch, there will be apps that can work with those watches to detect seizures similar to the way that the Embrace 2 watch does. There are also movement detectors or MATs, also audiovisual things like monitors. Now, are these necessary for you to go to college? No, but if it's an extra peace of mind that if you're someone that has, when I recommend it to patients is usually in patients that have frequent or at least more common seizures at night in their sleep. So that's more of a SUDEP or sudden unexplained death and epilepsy risk. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit as well. And so I usually recommend if patients are wearing it to wear it when they're sleeping, since convulsions or bilateral tonic-clonic seizures during sleep are more of a higher SUDEP risk and a danger. So I'd rather have people be notified of when that happens. So if you're staying alone or not with a roommate, you can actually set the device to notify somebody when you have a seizure, whether they're in the same room or even in another state. So even having it set up to alert a family member that can call your RA or have it set to let somebody know that you've had a seizure and someone can come and check on you. Again, the thing I want to emphasize that none of these only one is FDA approved, but so far, none of the data so far has shown that they prevent SUDEP, but it is just another tool in our toolkit to help us be safe with epilepsy. So why is seizure safety important? SUDEP, sudden unexplained death in epilepsy. The risk of this is about 1 in 1,000 per year, but this risk can be higher in those who have frequent or uncontrolled bilateral tonic-clonic seizures, particularly in sleep. The cause, we don't know exactly why this happens. It's definitely, our worst fear and why we are so aggressively wanting to control, especially convulsive seizures. It's thought to be related to the dysfunction of the cardiorespiratory system during a seizure. So the most important way to reduce this risk is seizure control and reducing the risk of breakthrough seizures. So one thing I like to talk about, and now transitioning more into specifics of life in college with epilepsy, is that what is seizure threshold? So a seizure threshold, everybody has a seizure threshold. Now, I always have to describe it, everyone has a seizure threshold. Anybody can have a seizure. Now, people with epilepsy have a lower seizure threshold and are more prone to seizures than the general population. There are certain things, activities, substances, medications that can also bring the seizure threshold down even lower. A lot of these things are also inherent to the college experience. Sleep deprivation, stress, illness, certain substances can all lower the seizure threshold. So these are all things to keep in mind when you're going about your time in college, making sure you get your rest. I know easier said than done, trust me from personal experience, but it is very important to make sure you get your adequate rest. Now, substances. We can't talk about college without talking about some of these things. So alcohol in particular works as a nervous system depressant. So you would think this should stop seizures and be helpful to seizures, right? However, during intoxication, the seizure threshold may actually be higher, but during the more after effect, the 6 to 48 hours post ingestion, is more of a pro seizure. So that is what we worry about. Rather than acute intoxication, we more worry about the after effect, that your risk for seizure can be higher. And then drinking a lot of time also leads to sleep deprivation, maybe missed medication. All of those things all lower the seizure threshold and increase your risk for seizure. Alcohol can also increase the metabolism of seizure medicines. It can make your medicine leave your system faster. And also it can increase the risk of SUDEP through cardiac effects. My job here is not to say, don't drink, don't do any of these things. I'm just here to give you the information to help make this college experience safe for you. Marijuana. So I like this quote a lot. It is unclear whether cannabis is a hero or a villain in epilepsy care. I took that directly from the paper that I found this. I thought it was a great summary. So in animal models, cannabinoids have been shown to be anti-seizure properties. So the medication is actually one FDA-approved cannabidiol for epilepsy called Epidiolex. Now, this is only used in very severe epilepsy, severe genetic epilepsy encephalopathies like Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, Dravet syndrome, and then, but so not, your average person with epilepsy is typically not taking Epidiolex. However, there's been conflicting reports, and we really can't do randomized controlled trials on marijuana because of the legality of it so far, which has been tied up in the courts. So it's really unclear what the effects are. Some are pro seizure, some are anti-seizure. So it's just really hard to know. Other things, cocaine can induce seizures in people with and without epilepsy. And then tramadol actually lowers seizure threshold, which is a form of an opiate, and GHB, which is similar to alcohol. It can also increase the risk for seizure in the withdrawal period rather than acute intoxication. Now, something that I think is paramount to discuss, especially with considering college and pretty much just the entire epilepsy population, including myself, depression and anxiety. So lifetime prevalence of depression in those with those with epilepsy is 55%. Anxiety is seen at least 10 to 25%, and so many go untreated. There's a big myth that maybe antidepressants cannot be prescribed to people with epilepsy, and that's just not true. Especially this typical first line, second line medications that are SSRIs, SNRIs, they are safe for people with epilepsy. There's one medication that I usually advise to avoid. It's called bupropion, which can also lower that seizure threshold that I was talking about. But you should always make this decision in conjunction with your psychiatrist, if necessary, your primary care, and your neurologist to figure out what the best medication is for you. And a combination of counseling and medication has been found to be the most safe and effective. And make sure you utilize your support team. Your neurologist, we are here for you, and also your friends, your roommates, your family, your RAs. There are lots of people that hear from you. So make sure if you're feeling depression, anxiety, especially in this new stressful setting, just make sure you know that you're not alone. And lastly, contraceptions, always something I like to discuss with pretty much anybody of childbearing age. It's most important for women to discuss with their gynecologist or neurologist, pick the best and safest option for you. So one thing that I always want people to know, especially if you're on medication like lamotrigine or Lamictal, estrogen-containing birth controls can affect anti-seizure medication. So your birth control can make your seizure medications lower, especially Lamictal, probably by about 60%. Also, anti-seizure medication can affect birth control the other way around, making them less effective. So it's just important to know what birth control you're using, what medications you're on, and making sure that the contraception you're using is safe for you, and also that it's not having an effect on your birth control from your medication. So you're off to college. I know that was a lot of information I threw out there and I talked very quickly, but I hope you learned stuff, have fun, be safe, and we are here for you. Thank you so much.
Lisa, do we have any questions at this time for Nicole?
I don't think we have anything that we need to address right now, Andrew, so I think we can move on, and anything else we'll address at the end.
Okay,
Thanks so
great.
much.
Thank you so much, Nicole. That was super helpful. So we thank you for your time, and definitely if you have any questions, type them into the question section of your toolbar, and we'd be happy to help with that. Dr. David Nast is the Director of Specialized Services at Ramapo College of New Jersey. He has been in higher education for over 25 years. Prior to his current position, he held similar positions at the County College of Morris and Monmouth University. A recent professional highlight for Dr. Nast was a survey by Great Value Colleges that ranked Ramapo College 24th in the nation for their list of disability-friendly schools. Well, that's a great achievement. We just like to thank Dr. David Nast for taking the time to provide this super helpful information for those going off to college and that new journey in life. So at this point, I just want to introduce Dr. David Nast. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here this evening. Just today, I was, I guess, complaining to my colleagues. 30 years, almost 30 years in this profession, I still have students and families reaching out to me in August for the very first time regarding their fall college experience, looking for accommodations and supports and so forth. And while it's not too late, it leaves me pondering, where have they been for the last 4 or 5 months and so forth. So yes, I love the opportunity to provide education and insight and maybe help individuals get a better start than they might otherwise. So I'm not an expert in regards to epilepsy. However, I am an expert in regards to equal access on college campuses in providing disability support services. So what I'll be covering tonight with you all are disability laws that protect individuals, the disclosure process in a college environment, the documentation needs within a college environment, and the accommodations that would be helpful, appropriate in a situation for a student with epilepsy. So the first major law in the United States that provided a protection for individuals on college campuses was Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. That law said any institution receiving federal funds must allow for equal access. And that was the initial law that opened up college campuses. I've always found it interesting how many perceive college campuses as being these very liberal bastions and so forth. But unfortunately, colleges as a broad institution, we have had a bad history of exclusion, whether disability, ethnic minority, gender, and so forth. So it took a law to provide equal access. In 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act came into being, which further expanded equal access. And then Congress took it upon themselves to expand that even further with the amendments to the Disabilities Act in 2008. These laws really provide a threshold in regards to equal access. I'm fortunate to be working at a college where we try to go beyond what we simply are required to do by law. But these are important foundations that we build upon at Ramapo. All right, next. So disability laws, what college cannot do. So as an institution, we can't discriminate against individuals who are otherwise qualified. If you meet the standard of admissions, we must allow you in. Epilepsy definitely is a condition that throughout history has had a variety of stigmas attached to it. And it would be very inappropriate legally for a college to deny a student access to their institution based upon such a diagnosis. In addition, we must make reasonable accommodations, minor adjustments that don't represent fundamental alterations. And also, sometimes there's a misconception that colleges have a cap in regards to the number of individuals that they will allow in with a disability. Once again, that would be illegal, cannot be done. And conversely, colleges don't have a quota saying they must accept a certain number of disabled individuals either. What we must do, as I mentioned, we must make reasonable accommodations. Reasonable leaves a lot up for interpretation. However, we don't have to make fundamental alterations. So if a requirement that a college has is considered an essential part of their curriculum, of their experience, they can require an individual to meet that obligation, even if it's in conflict with their disability situation. That sounds very dramatic, but I have not experienced a situation where any of the requirements at the institutions I were at, which ended up representing a barrier for individuals with epilepsy. Yeah, all right, next screen. The Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, as it's typically known in the industry, is something that drives parents crazy. As college students are considered to be autonomous individuals and have rights, whether or not you as parents believe they have rights, the federal government believes they do. And it keeps the college from being able to have certain conversations with parents. Students are able to waive those rights to allow the college to speak with parents or other individuals, but the student must take a proactive action in order to waive those rights. Statements like, "But I pay the bill," doesn't get you anywhere in this discussion. The other part is often, in a traditional family, there seems to be a lack of appreciation why FERPA is necessary. But it's important to understand that not every family circumstance is a functional family, and these are in place to protect individuals who may need protection from relatives or other individuals that may not have their best interest in mind. Okay, next. Disabilities disclosure. So in order for a college to be aware of a student's disability situation, the student must disclose to the college. I was going to say shocked, but I don't know how many times you can be shocked over the same thing. But students, parents regularly say, "Oh, but I thought my school simply would send that information to you." Most likely that information is only kept in special education records. Those records are not sent to a college. Student, parent have to explicitly express to have that information sent. A student's high school transcript makes no notation regarding a disability situation, or it does not indicate explicitly whether a student was in any special education classes. So a student can go off to college and make no disclosure to that college regarding their disability. While that's not what I'm recommending, it's important to understand, though, you have to be active in the process of disclosure. Okay. So students will regularly ask me, should I disclose in the admissions process whether or not I have a disability? And my general advice is only if you're going to explain why it represents you as a better candidate to the admissions office. If you're asking them to say, oh, please take pity on me because I have epilepsy, it's not going to go very far in their review. However, if you're explaining to them the challenges that you've overcome and how that makes you better prepared to take on the challenges in the college setting, then use it for your advantage. My experience working with students with disabilities as a group, I feel that they are a more gritty bunch, and I mean that in a positive way, in that when challenges come their way as a group, they stay the course. They don't give up as easily. And that's something that you can emphasize in a college essay or in a college interview, but simply, dropping in that you have epilepsy and thinking that's going to win you the admissions process. I'm not admissions, but I highly doubt that that will help you. Making sure I cover information process. Yep. All right. Yeah. Most won't even ask it on their application. Some places say, oh, it's illegal for us to ask it. I don't know if it's illegal to ask, but the problem is if they ask it and then they turn you down, you as the student could say, oh, but they turned me down because they knew I had epilepsy. So most colleges won't even ask about disabilities on their application. All right. You're on campus. So how do you go about disclosing your accommodation needs or ask for your accommodation needs on the college campus? So at this point in time, every college has a disability support office. The challenge is we all go by different names. Our office is the Office of Specialized Services. On our campus, we're generally known as OSS. At the College of New Jersey, I don't know if they continue to use the name, but they used to use the name Office of Differing Abilities, catchy. Other offices are straight Office of Disability Support and so forth. So there's a lot of camouflaging, so it could be difficult for you to find, but every office has at least one professional who is there to coordinate disability accommodations in regards to students. You're going to be asked to provide documentation. Dr. Hartmann was talking about how she fills out forms regarding for students going off to college. Our office has a medical documentation form, which would be the appropriate form in this type of situation, or our neurological condition form. We went to a form process a decade ago because we used to get letters from doctors which were generally 2 sentences, the student's diagnosis, and then a statement of please accommodate in whatever manner you can, or provide all appropriate accommodations. So we've developed a form that asks specific questions to help us assist the student while they're on our campus. And I've seen across other colleges the move to forms also. We'll accept information from the high school setting also. Your professors will not know about your situation unless you go through the disclosure process. At Ramapo, we have a system by which you're able to log into our OSS online system, pick out the classes that you want to disclose in, and then after submitting that, you can pick out specifically the accommodations that you want to request for the particular classes. Other schools will have some similar process. they may still be using paper and pencil, where you hand deliver the information to the professor. But the professor is not going to be aware of your accommodations or the fact that you have any type of disability unless you go through the process. If you decide, oh, I'm just going to, do it unofficial, I'm going to go to the professor and ask, in high school, I used to get additional time. I was hoping to use this. Our office instruct professors to simply say, you have to go through the Office of Specialized Services. Sometimes students think that's just a professor being hard-nosed. The reality is we tell professors that situation may go fine between you and the student, but then when the student goes to the next professor and they say no, all of a sudden the student believes they have a discrimination claim against the second professor because the first one accommodated them. Why won't the second one? Well, the first one wasn't following the policy of the college. All right, so, all right. Within our system, and I would say in most systems, those notices do not disclose the student's diagnoses. You as the student are free to share that specific information. But as from our office, we do not provide that information in a blanket fashion. Professors may or may not have a clear understanding of the different information that we would be providing if we provide diagnostic or diagnosis information. So we keep that confidential on our end, but we share that the student is affiliated with our office. These are the accommodations we believe are appropriate. And if they have any concern, to contact the student's disability counselor, which is listed at the bottom of the notice. All right. Each school has its different documentation process. Most schools will have forms, as I mentioned. So one of the things we regularly get are 504 plans and IEPs and nothing else. We need more information than that. Somehow students and families simply think, oh, this was my plan in high school, the college will simply accept it. We're operating under different laws. While they call it a 504 plan in high school, the reality is I've seen 504 plans that go well beyond equal access, and a professor is just not going to follow those recommendations, let alone my office support them. Number one thing that we're seeing post-pandemic, which I don't have a clear answer why, and it doesn't directly relate to epilepsy, but we have, like every other application to our office, students are asking for study guides as accommodations. That's not equal access. Creating a document to help you study, that's not the professor's responsibility. There's no way my office can require a faculty member to do that. There's nothing about a particular student's disability that would suggest that a study guide represents equal access. But we see those in IEPs and 504 plans all the time. All right, next. So a brief list of accommodations that may be relevant for what we're talking about tonight. Extended time on exams. Our office is looking for anything that could slow up a student in the testing process. College exams aren't intended to be really timed. The reason there is a time limit, that's the class period. So providing extended time is pretty easy. Rescheduling exams, coming post seizure type of situation, you may need time to recover. Rescheduling exam that should have occurred is something that a disability support office can assist with. Our office can particularly be helpful in that, and also providing the location for that later exam. Recording the class lecture in order to provide a backup to your own class notes. Concerns about focus and attention, the audio recording can assist with that. Modified class attendance policy. We can't require a faculty member to not hold a student to an attendance policy. but we can ask for a modification of that attendance policy. This is definitely one of those examples where a student can't attend due to medical circumstances in high school, would simply be excused. It does not translate to the college environment. Early registration or priority registration terms can be a little different, but this can be really, really important, really helpful, particularly at four-year colleges. Students sign up for classes at a four-year college at the first opportunity that they're allowed to sign up for their classes. And there's a heavy price to pay if you don't, in the sense of you're picking from the crumbs. So early course registration at our college, if you have that as an accommodation through our office, you're picking after graduate students, but before seniors. And what that allows you to do is pick from what's available versus what's left. So that could, all right, that could be important due to timing of your medication. That could be important due to fatigue factors. You may want to avoid too many classes in a row. There may be concerns about sleep schedule and not having very early classes or very late classes. Early registration, priority registration gives you the greatest chance of setting up the schedule that best meets your needs. Housing-related accommodations. As the doctor said, you need for good sleep patterns. So one of the things that leaves us a little concerned is when a student with a seizure diagnosis is looking to live alone. We can make it happen, but do you need someone to check in on you, maybe? Because if you're living alone, it doesn't naturally happen in those types of situations. Do you need maybe a setting with fewer roommates or suite mates? Once again, that's something that we could look at doing it as an accommodation. And keep in mind, what I've provided here is just things that I immediately thought would be appropriate. In our database of pre-written accommodations, we have over 200, and I added 3 more today. Speaking with a student with type 1 diabetes, she came up with things that we definitely could support, but we've never supported before. So we're always adding to our list of things that we believe are reasonable accommodations within the Ramapo environment. So when you're looking at different schools, if disability support is important for you, things that you should be asking is, where's the disability support office located? That will tell you how the college views that on that campus. We're located smack dab middle of the campus, not some basement dwelling or some auxiliary building down by the parking lot. Who makes up the staff? At Ramapo, we have 4 professional counselors, a director, an office coordinator. Unfortunately, our numbers, our numbers grow. That's not the unfortunate part. The unfortunate part is our staff hasn't grown. So we have over 600 students affiliated with our office, which is about 150 students per counselor. That's a pretty good number, as some of the numbers will go into the hundreds per counselor at campuses. Common accommodations. If a particular accommodation is important to you, reach out to the office and ask if they've had experience supporting that accommodation. If you're going to be the first one ever using something, there may be some skepticism at that school, or there may need to be a little more education of that office regarding how this would work in that setting and so forth. And the last part is, where does testing take place? if you have any testing accommodations, is it going to be easy to utilize them? We're fortunate to have a testing center that is able to handle adaptive testing. The college that my son attended, major, large university, each of the schools at that university had their own testing center for the general population, and they handled accommodations within those testing centers. Seemed like a very efficient operation there. But at some schools, they lay it all back on the professor, and it becomes very challenging for a professor to provide things like extended time, potentially because of their own schedule and other responsibilities. So, you know, if you have the accommodations, how easy are they to use?